Hi, welcome. So if you are here to learn more about the King's-Dalhousie relationship, you are in the right place. So we are going to get started in just a minute. And I'm joined by my lovely colleague from Dalhousie, Lucas, and two current King students, Corey and Sophia. So we are going to do a presentation, and then you're going to get a chance to ask Corey and Sophia all of your questions. Before we get started, I'm just going to do a quick land acknowledgement and then put up the presentation, and we'll get right into it. So the University of King's College and Dalhousie University sit on unceded Mi'kmaq territory, subject to the peace and friendship treaties that are the basis for peaceful coexistence and good relations among all those who live in Mi'kma'ki. Kings and Dalhousie recognize and respect the leadership of the Mi'kmaq in protecting the land, the water, and all of nature, and seeks to follow their example, teachings, and treaties in how we live, work, and play as residents of Mi'kma'ki. Kings and Dalhousie also recognize the histories, contributions, and legacies of the African Nova Scotian people who've been here for over 400 years. I also want to say that as a current resident of Toronto, I would like to acknowledge that I live and work on the traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, and Huron-Wendat peoples. So we're in the same virtual space tonight, but most of us are probably from across Canada, if not North America. So I invite you, if you're comfortable, to make your own land acknowledgement by introducing yourself and the nation whose traditional lands you are on in the chat feature. So this is just a technical note, but please use the chat function for either your land acknowledgement or if you have a technical problem. If you have any questions you'd like to address to the panelists at the end during question period, please put those questions in the Q&A feature. So I'm just going to put the presentation up. Let it all. Second, there we go. So as I said, my name is Kaylee. I am a recruiter at the University of King's College, and tonight I'm joined by my lovely and talented colleague Lucas from Dalhousie University. So I'm going to talk a little bit about King's, and then Lucas is going to talk about Dalhousie, and we're really going to focus on both the experiences that each school can offer and then how you can combine them together. So again, we have this land acknowledgement that I did at the beginning. I put it before this slide because I didn't have enough space to include Toronto, but I kept this picture up because it shows a really good picture of the waterfront and kind of situates Halifax as a city. So Halifax is the urban center of the Maritimes. I believe there's around 400,000 people right now. It has a great art scene, great music scene. There are 7 universities and colleges. So there's Dalhousie, King's, St. Anne's, SMU, NSCC, all sorts of great places, which means that there's around 40,000 students during the year. So that means that the city during the school year is actually quite young. I think the median age is something like 26. And once again, this is a beautiful view of Halifax Harbor, and Kings and Dalhousie are actually only a 20-minute walk away. So a lot of students, when I talk to them, they think that Halifax is sort of in the middle of nowhere, and that is emphatically not the case. So I really love this picture because it shows how close Kings and Dalhousie are. So below are listed some of the resources that we share that Lucas and I will talk about later. But you can see here that Kings and Dalhousie were right beside each other. There's a lot of green space. And also at the bottom where you see the list of different services, that's actually the ocean. So if you go to Kings or Dalhousie, you're only really a 5-minute walk away from the ocean, which is something as someone being a resident from Toronto and being on a lake was a really wonderful and novel experience. So the University of King's College, we are the oldest chartered university in Canada, founded in 1789, I believe. We are a fairly small institution. We have less than 1,000 students, and we're built on the Oxbridge model, which means that we're built on a quad, which is a square. And what that means is that students, faculty, staff, and other community members are all sharing the same communal space. So one of the things that King's is really committed to is offering a very close-knit learning community. And that's something that we really commit to and strive to offer our students. So you're probably here for the foundation year program. It's our most well-known program. So the foundation year program, you can take it as a science, arts, music, or journalism student. So if you're interested in any of those degree types, you can be in this program and you'll all be in the same courses together. Sometimes students ask me if journalism or science or music students are separate. No, all these different degree types and all these students with different interests are all in the same program together. So the foundation year program, I think of it as the story of the West and the world from ancient Greece to the contemporary era. Students read actual books, no textbooks, and these books are all selected because they're incredibly influential ideas. So it moves section by section. So you start in the ancient world and then end up in our own contemporary world. And you'll read philosophy, literature, some poetry, some plays, and you get a really good sort of survey of all the things that the Faculty of Arts and Social Sciences can offer you as a student. Because you're focusing in this and being kind of in one larger course rather than taking multiple courses, it means that you're able to, in my experience, try a bunch of different things out instead of having to pick and choose without really knowing what you're getting into. So the foundation year program is famous for tutorials. So students will read something new each day. They'll have lecture in the morning followed by tutorials, and tutorials are really the magic of the foundation year program. So this is a picture of our outdoor learning center. I don't know if I want to say center, space is probably the better word. And as you can see, tutorials are very much a place for students to talk. When I'm on the road, I often have students guess who the teacher is, but since we're all virtual, I'm just going to give the answer out. So if you think the person with blonde hair and orange knee socks is the teacher, you are incorrect. The teacher is actually the woman in the diamond sweater and glasses over on the right side of the screen. And what this shows is that tutorials are really a conversational space for students and a place where students are really learning how to talk to each other, but also how to listen to each other. Like everyone focuses on the student who's talking, but if you look at the other students, they're all very engaged in listening, which to me is the big thing that you learn about from the foundation year program. And the really kind of big advantage you have is that you know how to listen to other people. And as you move throughout your degrees and into your careers, those kinds of soft skills are really invaluable. We also have a great journalism program. So our journalism school is one of the best in the country. You learn how to research effectively, how to ask the right questions, how to write really well. In the first year, you're in the foundation year program, and then Journalism Foundations 101, which is where you learn sort of the basics of being a journalist. In the second and third year, you focus a lot on developing sort of the hands-on skills of being a journalist. So how to use a camera, how to use software, how to put stories together visually, as well as the particular way to think as a journalist. So how to, once again, ask those great questions, research effectively, how to put stories together. And then the final year, you have an internship. And we've had interns go to the Globe and Mail, Elle Magazine, CBC, all sorts of great places to get hands-on experience. So when they graduate, they already have a sort of burgeoning professional network. There's also King's grads in every CBC newsroom, and King's is really well known in the journalism world for producing really great journalists. So there's already this great sort of extensive alumni network when you graduate. So I threw a lot of information at you, so I hope this slide clarifies a few things. So King's and Dalhousie, how are we related? So if you're in the foundation year program, the King's first year looks a little different from the standard first year. So if you were doing the standard first year, or we would call undeclared, you would be taking 10 separate courses over the year, 5 in each semester. At King's and FIP, that's structured a little bit differently. So you would be taking the majority of your courses collected in FIP. So if you're an arts, journalism, or music student, 4 of those courses you're taking a semester, you're going to be in foundation year program. If you're a science student, it's going to be 3 of those classes. So you have room for a math and a science elective. So the great thing about King's, and I'm just going to pass it on to Lucas soon, is that we have this relationship with Dalhousie where we share the Faculty of Arts and the Faculty of Science. So in your second year, when you transition more towards a standard model where you're going to be choosing different courses, really experimenting with programs, not only do you have this great close-knit learning environment that you can tap into, but you also have all the resources of a major research institution and all the programs that they can offer as well. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it on to my lovely and talented colleague, Lucas, and he is going to take us through Dalhousie. Lucas,
Thank you
over
so
to you.
much. Yes, thank you. And you couldn't have put it better when you said the amount of variety that's available for you to take. Because just starting out with the arts and social sciences, Dalhousie actually has the most interdisciplinary and course variety the most interdisciplinary course variety rather in the arts and social sciences of any institution in Atlantic Canada. We, even though some people might know us as a science institution, we have a wealth of variety, whether it's things like gender and women's studies or things like languages, everything to English and things you would traditionally associate with the arts and social sciences, as well as we are the only performing arts school east of Montreal as well. So that's our Fountain School of Performing Arts, which has a music program, which offers multiple different disciplines in theater, whether it's costume studies, whether it's theater design, whether it's acting. And this is going to be true of all of the Dalhousie majors. Any Dal student can take any King's course and vice versa. It's the same course selection portal. So when you're picking your courses as a King student, you are picking them from the same list that the Dal students are choosing from as well. And now I'll just go on to, I think science is the next slide. So not to, we talked a lot about the arts, but we are also renowned for our sciences. Dalhousie is, as Kaylee pointed out, a research institution. In fact, we're a part of what's called the U15. So the U15 are the 15 undergraduate schools in Canada that do the most research, spend the most money on research. And Dalhousie is one of the most eastern kind of members of the U15, the only one in Nova Scotia. And so this means that there's opportunities for you to participate in undergraduate research, in some cases as early as your first year of study, if you're in what's called the DAL Integrated Science Program. But if you're in, for instance, your second year and you're an honors student in the sciences, you have the ability to participate in research as a student. And when I say research, some specific examples like the one that's listed on this page, we've had students who worked on the lithium ion batteries that's in Tesla vehicles. We've had students who for instance, microbiology and immunology students who worked on a little thing called the COVID vaccine as a student. So that's pretty remarkable. And in some fields, for instance, like ocean science, marine biology, environmental sciences, because we're a research school and because of our location on the Atlantic Ocean, we're doing things in that respect that no other university in the country is doing in some cases. So it's really a star faculty for the institution. Another thing is that it doesn't have to stay, the learning variety doesn't just stay in Nova Scotia. We are a very international institution. We have students coming in from over 115 different countries. But you also have the opportunity to travel yourself as an international student to over 30 countries. So we have students all over the globe, whether it's Belize, Shanghai, Sub-Saharan Africa, the Netherlands, France. I can continue, the list goes on, but we have partnerships with universities all over the globe. Two ways to do it. Basically, you can either do a learning exchange through your specific faculty, or there's ones that are available to students, any student at Dalhousie or King's. And it doesn't just have to be an international learning experience as well. For instance, if your program has a co-op, you have the opportunity to do your co-op internationally. Same with a paid internship or something like that, depending on what course you're in.
Thank you so much, Lucas. So just to sort of support some of the things that Lucas has been saying, you can do so much as a King's or Dalhousie student. So this is just a selection of the programs that are available to King's and Dalhousie students. So the programs here that have a K beside them are King's courses. So they're based at King's. I did contemporary studies, which was a King's course, and then I combined it with gender and women's studies. So I have a combined degree. And Corey and Sophia are both in the Law, Justice, and Society program. Corey is doing a minor in Russian studies, and then Sophia is doing a minor in gender and women's studies. So all three of those degrees, once again, are very versatile. They're all interdisciplinary programs, which is really great, especially if you have a lot of different interests in like literature, history, philosophy. You're able to combine all of those in those programs. So at King's, we have our own study abroad programs. So I did the Florence trip the first year they offered it. You go to Florence and you learn about Renaissance Italy. So you learn about politics, art, literature. You're living in an old convent. You're on the other side from where all the tourist attractions are. So you're in kind of like the hipper part of Florence. And yeah, it's a really fun way of learning more. It's very kind of, you're experiencing sort of the history, but it's also a fun way to sort of learn because you're really living with the people who you're learning with in this sort of particular context. You get to explore a new country, you get to see all sorts of new things. So you get that really nice kind of intercultural experience that Lucas was talking about. So we're going to talk a little bit about admissions and then some upcoming events. Then we're going to get into question period. So for a Bachelor of Arts in the foundation year program, and this is the same for the foundation year program if you're a science student or an undeclared, is that you need at least a 75% in your top 5 courses. Grade 12 math is a must. And for science, you need either pre-calculus or calculus. For undeclared, and all undeclared means is that you aren't doing the foundation year program. For Bachelor of Arts, you need a 70% in those top 5. For journalism, we need a minimum of 80% in your top 5 courses, and you need to write a short little journalism sketch. Bachelor of Music, you need a 75%, and you also have to audition at the Fountain School of Performing Arts, which is at Dalhousie. And the only real requirement that goes across all of these is we need a grade 12 academic level English. So this is just sort of a quick rundown of some key dates. So as of right now, you can apply to King's or Dalhousie. We are in the early admission period, so we are looking for a slightly higher average. So to be admitted, you would need at least an 80% for arts or science, an 85% for journalism, and an 80% for music. I know that the science faculty is actually quite popular, so I encourage you to be applying as soon as you have grades that you feel comfortable applying with. February 1st is when regular admission begins, and that's when we return back to our regular requirements, which is generally a 75% across, and then a 70% for undeclared arts. March 1st is the admission application deadline to be considered for entrance scholarships, and it's also the deadline for major awards applications. So at King's, if you apply, you're automatically considered for entrance awards if you apply by March 1st. And then the major awards application deadline is also March 1st, that same day. Lucas, is that the same deadline for Dalhousie students?
For entrance awards, it's March 1st. So yeah, you want to apply before March 1st to be able to be considered for entrance awards and scholarships. You can still apply after that date, but you won't be able to be considered for entrance awards and scholarships.
And Dalhousie students have to apply separately for scholarships as well, am I correct?
Correct. So in Dalhousie, you don't actually have to be accepted to apply for scholarships. You just have to have applied to Dalhousie. But then there's a separate application you fill out, the entrance award application. It's a single application. And if you fill that one application out, we'll consider you for all of our thousands of different scholarships. You don't have to look through and see which ones you might qualify for. We do that work for you, but you do have to fill out that single entrance award application.
Yes, and I'll also say we'll probably get more questions about residence, but to sort of preempt that now, at King's, we don't guarantee first year residence. It's first come, first serve. And every year residence has been a very kind of hot commodity. So I encourage you to apply for residence as soon as possible because the wait list has been starting earlier and earlier each year. And that is a separate application from your application of admission. And Lucas, does Dalhousie have a similar application process? I think it's a little different.
We do have a separate residence application now. Unlike the entrance award application, you can't apply for residence until you've paid your admissions deposit and confirmed your offer, telling us that you have a seat in your program. And unlike King's, we do have a residence guarantee for May 15th. So if you apply before May 15th and apply for residence before May 15th, you're guaranteed a spot of residence. But also, much like King's, it is a hot commodity, and residence is first come, first serve. So the earlier you apply for residence, the more likely you are to have your first choice in terms of residence building and accommodation.
Yeah, so to, I guess, put it kind of the essential kind of thing you need to know about King's and Dalhousie residents is that you want to apply early and that you have to pay a few admissions deposits in order to activate those applications. And the other thing with residents is that you want to be very honest. So if you aren't a morning person, but you think that's going to change, it's not going to change. Tell us that you're not a morning person. It never does. And fill out your residence application yourself because we find that students are much more likely to be honest if they do it themselves. So don't let your parents fill it out for you. So there are a few next steps. So you can book a campus tour at Dalhousie or King's. King's, we're having a winter open house February 25th. We have some more webinars. And of course, right now you can apply to both King's or Dalhousie. So that's, I think, pretty exciting. You can connect with us on Instagram, on our YouTube page. My information is here in the corner. Lucas and I are both going to put our emails in the chat so you can reach out to us after. But I would say right now, it would probably be a better use of our time to actually get into some questions. So Lucas, I believe we're going to be joined shortly by Corey and Sophia. So I'm going to look at we got one question that I think we can answer ourselves in the chat.
I saw one in the chat about Dalhousie. I'll quickly answer that. Someone asked, at Dalhousie, are all undergrad classes taught by professors? Professors are going to be leading the teaching on the majority of your courses. Now, every once in a while, you're going to have a tutorial or something taught by a teaching assistant, a TA. But it's a major Canadian university. It's the same expectation as any major Canadian university. Professors are leading the majority of the coursework.
Yes, and if you do have an instructor, they still have the academic qualifications of a professor. So for example, in the journalism faculty, they have a lot of instructors and they're still working journalists. They still have all those academic qualifications. They have a slightly different title. In the foundation year program, you have FIP faculty or tutors. They aren't teaching assistants, they're full-time faculty. They have, once again, all the qualifications of a professor. They just have a slightly different title. So the first question we have is, when do you announce what type of entrance scholarships people receive? Lucas, I'm not sure what the Dalhousie process is, but generally at King's, if you apply before March 1st, with your offer of admission, we'll also tell you what your entrance award would be. So Lucas, can you let us know what the Dalhousie process is, please?
Yeah, it's a little bit of a different process. So if you apply before March 1st, we take in a lot of applications for entrance awards, and you'll receive your entrance award offer mid-April. So in April is when you're going to hear back just how much the money the university is potentially offering you.
Yes, that sounds like everything I've heard. So yeah, King's and Dalhousie, we have some slightly different processes. So if you ever have any questions that, for example, if you ask me a question about Dalhousie that I can't answer, I'll pass you on to Lucas or another Dalhousie colleague, and likewise. So once again, if you have any questions and you kind of are talking to one school, but you have questions about another school, you can reach out to the person you're already in contact with, and we can make sure that you're put in contact with someone who can answer your question. So I'm going to, we have a few questions written down. If you have any questions, put them in the chat feature, but right now I'm just going to start asking the ones I prepared before the presentation. So this is a question I get a lot from students, and I'm going to ask this question to Sophia and Corey. What are your King's and Dalhousie courses like? And what are the vibes of each campus? Whichever one you want to start.
I guess I can start a bit and then Corey just interject whenever. But as Kaylee kind of pointed out, the foundation year program is sort of a self-contained first year. So it's very different than sort of the classes that you'll take in your second, third, fourth years of your undergrad. So my first year, I did foundation year. And so all my classes were King's classes. And I would say now being a Dal student, I'm in my King's and taking classes, sorry, at King's and Dal, and having both those experiences. I would say that the vibes are a bit different between the two campuses. King's is definitely more of an intimate campus, as Kaylee pointed out, just the way that it's structured with the quad. It's a smaller community, but Dalhousie is also an amazing campus. It's super close. There's lots going on there because it's a bit of a larger campus. But yeah, both are definitely lovely places to be, if that's a helpful answer.
I've also found they have pretty drastically different vibes. I find with a lot of my King's courses, they, at least for my degree, they've tended to be more philosophy focused, for one. And I've definitely noticed there's a big difference in the kind of community at King's versus Dal. I find at King's, a lot of the classes tend to be, at least in my experience, they've tended to be more kind of tutorial like in our foundation year, where it's students talking to each other. And at Dalhousie, I've been in kind of larger lectures with sometimes up to like 100 and 150 people. And I think both kind of have their benefits. I definitely notice when I'm at King's, I am pretty much guaranteed to bump into somebody that I know at any given time in any class or any location. And then with Dalhousie, it's I find kind of there are a lot of new people. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, I would say that's true. And Sophia, Corey, how do you find how easy it is to get in touch with your Dalhousie and King's professors? Because that's another question I get a lot, is some people want to know, like, am I going to be working really close with my professors? How easy it is to get in touch with them? So what would the two of you say about what it's like to work with professors at King's and Dal?
I've personally found, like, in both universities, it's been very easy to get in contact with professors. I find in the smaller classes I've been at King's, I'm usually talking to them in person in class. And then at Dalhousie, like, if I were to shoot out an email to them, they're always happy to meet up at office hours or in person even. But like it's been very easy to get in contact with them, and they're very responsive in my experience.
Yeah, absolutely. Completely agree. I've had really great experiences with both Dal and King's professors, always super accessible. Office hours are definitely a great way to make use of that accessibility. You can meet with your professors one-on-one and chat out any concerns you may have. So yeah, that's a great way to get in touch.
I'll also add to that in terms of, some of these Dalhousie courses are going to have significantly more students in them than some of the King's courses. And sometimes students are nervous sitting in some of those larger lecture halls where there could be many, many students. But in those cases, when you have those larger lectures, there's always going to be a tutorial as well. And the cap on those, I believe, is like 30 people. So even if you're in a 100-person classroom, there's going to be a smaller class. And then there's always going to be office hours. You're going to have your professor's email. And so even with those larger classes, it's not so intimidating. The professors and instructors are accessible.
Yeah, and another thing to keep in mind is that university isn't just about that first year. In the second, third, and fourth year, as you specialize more, as you get to know your professors a little better, you know yourself a little better, you're choosing different courses, the course sizes tend to get smaller. So either way, whichever way you kind of put your degree together, by the time you're in your fourth year, you're going to be in courses that are usually a lot much smaller than some of the larger sort of survey courses. So this is a question I get a lot. So I talk to students and they wonder, after they do the foundation year program, do they transfer to Dalhousie and never go to King's again? No, that's not what happens. King's and Dalhousie, we share the Faculty of Arts and the Faculty of Science. So to take courses at Dalhousie, to do Dal programs, you don't do any extra paperwork. You literally, as Lucas said, course selection is the same interface. You on the same website, you share the same seats, pay the same tuition. You just start taking courses at whichever school. But Corey and Sophia, I'm going to ask you in particular, what was it like transitioning from the foundation year program, where it's very close knit, it's kind of one big integrated course, to second year when you're going to meet new people, you're choosing your different courses, you're not all with the same people. Like, what was that transition like? What did you like? What did you find maybe like a little like challenging, that kind of thing?
Yeah, that's a really, really good question. I think the soft skills that you mentioned earlier that you gain from closer knit and smaller tutorial groups, like speaking and participating and kind of being proactive in conversations, that those skills that I learned in the foundation year really helped the transition to larger classes that I might have been taking in Dal in second year and beyond. Very, very easy. Going into second year from foundation year, when it was such a small tutorial group, it can range anywhere, maybe I guess between like 10 to 15 people. And that was the group, that was like, those were the people that I was seeing the most throughout my first year, that small group. So yeah, it was definitely daunting, thinking about going into a potentially like a large lecture that could have been over 150 people. So overall, I was definitely a bit nervous about that. But as you get into it, you're able to exercise those soft skills that Kaylee mentioned, and it makes it a lot easier for sure in those settings.
And I would just second what Sophia said, that I felt like, if anything, my first year at King's prepared me for the bigger courses at Dalhousie, rather than kind of them being two drastically different experiences.
Perfect. I couldn't have said it better myself. So I think the next question we should ask is about residence life. So obviously, I think from the information Lucas and I presented earlier, King's and Dalhousie, we do have separate residences. In King's, you do have to have a meal plan, and that meal plan can't be transferred to Dalhousie. But I get a lot of questions about what it's like, especially for students who are coming out of province, to live in residence. So 10 years ago when I came to King's, I moved from Ontario, but I think residence has changed a bit. So Corey, you're currently in a residence room. Could you tell us a little bit about residence and what it's like in right now, what it was like during COVID, that sort of residence experience that King's students get?
Yeah, for sure. So I've lived in residence for 2 years and worked in residence for another 2 years. So I could probably go on and on about it, but I'll try to keep it short. But in my experience, it's been pretty great living in residence. And I would just want to say, like, the meal plan, I'm a huge fan of. I got to say, the food has been like great this year. And the staff is really lovely. So I just wanted to shout them out real quick. But in residence, I think you might have a different experience depending on which residence you're in. A lot of different rooms have different layouts. You might be in a single room, which tends to be more like reserved for upper year students or people who need accommodations. And the other option would be a roommate situation, where you would either have a wall separating your two rooms, or you'd be in a double room with 2 beds in one single room. I was in a room with the wall splitting it, so I can't really speak for the double room experience, but I had a great time with my roommate, and I'm in a single room now, and that's going pretty great for me. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great to hear. So I do have a few more. Oh, Sophia?
All right, this is just a quick add-on. I'm from Halifax, so I'm a day student, and I never lived in residence. And just a quick little anecdote, but I was definitely really nervous going to King's and not being on residence, because I felt like I was going to miss out on a lot of things. But if you're in Halifax and you're considering applying to King's and maybe living at home for the first little bit of your degree, or you are opting out of residence, I would just say, don't worry. The King's community especially is like a very tight-knit community, and there's lots of opportunities where students from residence and day students are able to get together. And so, yeah, I feel like I definitely didn't miss a beat not being on residence. Just a little, add on there.
Perfect. Yeah, I will say, if you're a day student and you have friends who are in residence, it's not unheard of for if there's like a social event at King's for day students to just stay with their friend in residence for the night. So once again, King's is very close knit, and day students and resident students, as Sophia said, they aren't kept separate. You're all going to be in the same courses together, so you're all going to get to know each other. So I do have a few more questions, but if you have any particular questions you want to ask, please put them in the Q&A feature. We are here to answer every single one of them. So I have a question for Lucas now. So King's has a lot of great supports. On campus, we have our own residence team. We have a great support team with like an equity officer, a student support advisor, all that kind of stuff. But Lucas, I was wondering, what kind of facilities does Dalhousie have and the kind of supports that Dalhousie has that are available to King students? Because I know Dalhousie has a lot going on, and sometimes even I forget about it.
Right, and I'm under the impression I actually have to turn to you for this, but I believe that
Yeah.
King students have full ability to use the Dalplex, correct?
Yes, we can use
Yes.
the Dalplex.
Right.
Do you want to tell us what the Dalplex is, Lucas?
Exactly. So now that I know that, I'll provide the context of what the Dalplex is. So it's a brand new refurbished fitness facility located adjacent to the Dalhousie campus. Hundreds of different strength and training equipment. Apologies. An Olympic-sized swimming pool, as well as so many amenities. I can't even name them all off the top of my head, but it's a great fitness facility. And that's just in terms of facilities. You know, in terms of supports, we have things like the Student Health and Wellness Center. We have things like the Black Student Advising Center. We have the Indigenous Student Center. We have the Bissett Student Success Center, which provides course selection advising. And like I said, King's and Dal, it's the same course selection portal. We recognize at Dal that no two students are the same. Everybody has a different background as well as different needs. And so we try to have a diverse suite of options available and support systems available to meet those needs and to ensure that every student feels supported, welcome, and safe, and empowered to succeed in their education.
Yes, so we share the Student Health and Wellness Center. One cool feature that they added since I graduated in 2016 is that now you can do same day appointments, whether they be for physical or mental health. So you can, once again, you can use that. You have access to like accessibility. So if you need extra hour to do an exam, that's who you go through. We share the Black Student Advising Center. We share South House. We share all sorts of resources like that. At King's, we do have our own equity officer, our own, I believe it's a student support advisor is, I believe, the title I want to say. And then our residence team has a lot of support built in place because King's students, King's is its own sort of distinct community. And we recognize that a lot of King's students often kind of need to turn to us kind of immediately for support. And then we are able to connect them with resources at Dal if need be. You can also just like go to the Dal library as well. Like, as I'm sure Sophia, Corey, Lucas, and I can all attest to, like King's and Dalhousie are like a 2-minute walk away from each other.
Yeah, conversely, Dal students go to the beautiful King's library as well. I'll also add, when you're talking about the Health and Wellness Center, that's huge about the same day appointment. Some of you might not know this. If you don't have a family doctor, or if you're used to having a family doctor, I often joke that for those without a family doctor, the quality of healthcare available to you when you're at university is, I would say, as a higher standard than having to sit around and waiting in for like a walk-in appointment or something like that. So yes, make the best use of those resources while they're available to you as a student.
Yeah, all the healthcare I received when I was in Halifax was at the Dalhousie Wellness Center. I'm from Ontario, so I had an OHIP card. So as long as you have, like, for example, your OHIP card, if, for example, you need to go in a walk-in clinic on a weekend, you can just use that. So you don't need to get a separate OHIP card. So we do have a question, which is, what is security like on campus? So King's and Dalhousie both have professional security. Dalhousie has the Dal Alert program. Lucas, do you want to touch on that quickly?
Yeah, I'm trying to pull it up on my phone here. It's not, I don't have it installed, but I swear it's here. It's the Dal Safe app. So at any point you feel like you need to contact campus security or you feel in danger or anything like that, you're able to do so with the Dal Safe app. I believe There's even stations on campus as well, where you can push an emergency button and contact security. That way, 24-hour campus security, very safe, kind of enclosed campus. That's something that when people come to visit, they remark on is how kind of safe and secure the campus is.
Yeah, and Kings, we also have our own sort of student patrol. So it's generally upper year students where their job is to walk around the campus, patrol it regularly. They're still in red t-shirts, right? Like, yeah, Corey and Sophia are both nodding. And they're there to help, if students kind of need to reach out, or if a student is in crisis, or if there's something happening, they're trained to intervene quickly and to connect the right resources. King's residents, we also have Dons and junior Dons. Corey, I believe, was a junior Don, so I'm going to ask Corey to speak to his experience soon. You would also be using the Dal security app, but I will also echo what Lucas said, which is Kings and Dalhousie are pretty safe campuses. Like, when I first got this question, I was like, what? Like, Kings are so safe. So yeah, I'd say Halifax is generally like a pretty safe city, and Kings and Dalhousie are generally pretty safe places to be. I'm just gonna ask Corey if you could tell us a little bit about what a junior Don does and how do they add to security on campus? How do they support students? I think that would really kind of tie this question up nicely.
Yeah, for sure. So I was a junior Don. I started out during the COVID pandemic, and at the time they kind of wanted fewer people coming and going from the campus. So they combined student patrol with the Don position. And I thought it was kind of a nice addition because it's great having security and emergency services available, but sometimes you're in a situation where you don't want to take something to an extreme kind of authority. And it's nice to have kind of a student level, like just peers around you who kind of understand your situation and are like trained to help you through it. And it's kind of less intimidating that way. At least that's what I've found. And yeah, and that's also kind of brings me, I was just thinking, like, on that note, there are like a lot of student employment opportunities on campus, being like student patrol. And I guess like kind of any area you walk into in Kings, you'll find like students working like at our front desk, our library, our meal hall, our student cafe, yeah, the galley, and patrol, of course, which yeah, it's pretty awesome to see.
Yeah, students are definitely doing a lot of work at Kings, which is super integral. And I also think that like Kings has this sort of thing where like you'll see someone in class, but then you'll see them in kind of like another walk of life, sort of. So you kind of like, they kind of become sort of almost like kind of like a sitcom almost or something, like where we all sort of know each other. I just got a question here. The closest international airport, I believe, is about a half-hour drive away, the Halifax International Airport.
It's with the traffic. It's a half hour, 20 minutes. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not Toronto traffic. Like Toronto traffic, like you think it's going to be half an hour. You're there for like 2 hours on the 401. And the total enrollment for FIP is generally around 220 students usually. Yeah, so I have a few other questions I can ask. Feel free to throw some more in the chat function. So another question that I get a lot is, when you graduate from Kings or Dalhousie, what will your degree actually say? So the way it works is that your degree is granted by the university that the program you're going to is based in. So I did contemporary studies, which is a King's degree or King's degree program, and gender and women's studies, which is a Dalhousie program. So my degree is actually from both schools. So if you were to, let's say, do kind of just like Dalhousie programs, so let's just say sociology and English, your degree is from Dalhousie. If you were to do just journalism, your degree would just be a King's degree. That said, because you're a King's student, you're coming to King's academic advising, you're going to be part of King's events, you're going to be in the same graduation ceremony as the students you started out with in FIP who perhaps did like King's programs. So once again, like King's and Dalhousie are very close, but you're never going to like not be connected to the King's community. Or if you lose contact with the King's community, like you'd have to be very intentional about it. And most people want to stick around King's. So I actually have a question for Sophia, who's going to be going to study abroad soon. Do you want to tell us a little bit about the process for choosing study abroad, applying for study abroad, since I get this question a lot? Sophia, take it away.
Absolutely. Yes. So I am going abroad for this upcoming winter semester. I'm going to Malta, which is really exciting. I'm leaving February 1st, so I am super pumped. The process to apply, I'm doing an exchange or study abroad. It is super easy. I remember one night a bunch of my friends, it's about like you would apply in and around February, I think, or March, to apply for the, upcoming semesters. But yeah, I applied for study abroad last February. And all my friends had gotten together. They were all submitting their applications. And I was like, what are you guys doing? And they're like, oh, we're applying for study abroad. And I was like, what do I have to do? I'd love to do it too. And there's no fee to apply. You write an essay as to, why you would like to go abroad. And you submit your top 3 choices, and Dal does their best to place you in one of those top 3 choices. So yeah, it's an extremely easy process. And once you get going, you've been placed at your host institution. Mine is the University of Malta. You get in contact with admin there, and the Dal Exchange office is helping you make the process as seamless as possible. I'm making sure that most of the credits I'm taking while abroad will transfer back and contribute to my overall degree. So it's not like you're missing out. If you go on exchange, it won't put you behind if you take the steps to make sure you choose courses that will transfer over. But yeah, overall, a very easy process. And if any questions come up about studying abroad, I'm happy to take them on.
Thank you so much, Sophia. You answered that so eloquently. So I have another question here, which is about sports teams. So Corey, Sophia, are either of you on a sports team? I know the answer to this, so you don't have to. I just wanted to double check. So King's and Dalhousie students, we do share some sports teams. So if you are interested in intramural sports, if you want to do a club sport like sailing, for example, is a club sport, rowing is a club sport, we share those teams. The only thing we do not share are varsity sports. So King's, we have our own varsity soccer team. Dalhousie has its own varsity soccer team. Those are kept separate. However, as Lucas said, we share a lot of the same sporting facilities. King's has, we have our own like weight room, our own kind of gym area, but you're also able to go to Dalhousie as well and enjoy their new state-of-the-art gym. And yeah, you also have access to clubs. So King's and Dalhousie, we share like a debate club. I think we share we also share quite a few other clubs there. My COVID brain is still in effect.
Yeah. There's over 400 clubs and societies at Dalhousie, and there's quite a bit of crossover with King's. Yeah.
Yeah, and even when I think there's a separate King's, like the Watch and the Dal Gazette, which are their own student newspapers, but King's and Dalhousie students can write for either one. So there's some where maybe they're a separate club, but King's and Dalhousie students for the most part can still participate in them. So we're winding down to the end. If you have any questions, feel free to throw them in. But I think we're at the kind of last 2 questions. So a question I get from students, Lucas, I'm sure you get this too, is with King's and Dal sharing so much, and really if you apply to either school because you have resources at either one, it's with a few kind of key exceptions, you're both, either way, you're going to a great school. What would you consider when you're applying to each school, or what's something that you need to keep in mind when you're applying to King's and Dalhousie and thinking about perhaps which one you'd want to be your home base? Because once again, it's more of a home base. You still have access to all those programs and degrees. So it's really not, it's kind of unfair to pose it as a one or the other sort of thing.
And earlier you were talking about this in terms of someone was asking, okay, do I do my foundation year at King's, then I'm never back and I spend the rest of my time at Dalhousie? And that's so untrue. For instance, even if someone has never even applied to King's and they're just a full-on Dalhousie student, but they're a Bachelor of Arts student, they will be probably taking courses at King's. Like I said, when you're picking your courses, it's all from the same portal. And so often your required class in the Bachelor of Arts is going to be on the King's campus. So that's something to keep in mind, how close the relationships are. I think the overall campus vibe is that's the big difference between the two institutions. Dal is a lot larger in terms of student population. It's the most attended institution in Atlantic Canada with 15,000 undergraduate students, which is significantly larger than King's, whereas King's is more personal, smaller size. But that being said, the other big thing to consider is your first year, especially if you're someone who's interested in doing the foundation year program, because that's not an opportunity that's going to be available at Dalhousie. There might be other first year opportunities at Dalhousie. For instance, if you wanted to be a first year integrated science student, that's something that's only available to Dalhousie students and not King's students. But if you were looking to do foundation year, you're definitely going to want to prioritize King's as the school that you're going to.
Yeah, and when I talk to students, when they talk about when they ask me about Dalhousie, I say that Dalhousie is really great about offering like a very sort of like, I want to say like kind of like the classic sort of first year experience, but just on like a scale that I think is much less overwhelming. Because Dalhousie, when I would think of like kind of the equivalent sort of university experiences that they would offer, like you'd be looking at schools of like 40,000-60,000 students. Dalhousie only has, I think, like 21,000 students.
Right. So despite us being the most attended in Atlantic Canada, on a national scale, we're actually a medium-sized institution. And for instance, our biggest lecture hall, I think, seats 500 people. And so that might sound like, oh my gosh, that's such a scary large amount of people. But if you look at, like, for instance, the University of Toronto, not to pick on them, but to pick a single example, their largest classroom fits 1,000, right? So it is that kind of major Canadian institution, that scale, but smaller, more personal, a little bit more manageable. Despite it being significantly bigger than King's, I feel like it's easy to get your bearings and to find your Dal community in first year.
Yeah, and I find that Dal is very like unpretentious as well.
Oh, for sure.
Like it's very easy to get. I mean, I don't think King's is pretentious either, but like Dalhousie is like definitely like a really great kind of like laid back East Coast lifestyle school, while also still being like a super, super great school. So we've got a few questions come in. So the first one is, with the degree difference in receiving your degree based on the program you're in, what would be the case for students in the Fountain School of the Arts? So the Fountain School of the Arts is based at Dalhousie. So I believe if, for example, you got a degree in acting, it would be granted by Dalhousie University.
That is correct.
The second question we have here is, do you have to be a music student in either King's or Dalhousie to play in their bands or orchestras? It would depend. Like King's, we have our own, like we have two choirs. We have one that's a professional choir and one that's like an amateur choir, for example. I'm not super familiar with the Dalhousie orchestras, but I imagine there's a similar sort of like amateur level.
It's exactly that, yeah.
Level.
It's very similar to athletics, right? There's varsity athletics and there's club level sports, right? So, you know, the Dal Orchestra is very much like the varsity level where you have to be a music student. But then there's a more casual opportunity as well.
Yeah, and I would say that King's and Dalhousie, like Halifax, has a great music scene. So there's lots of like open mic nights. The King's bar, the Wardroom, has its own open mic nights. I imagine Dalhousie does as well. There's a lot of student bands. This is, I think, Corey, Sophia will have this same anecdote as I do. But my first week at King's, there was just this group of people who I guess had brought their guitars in with them first year and were just like playing them in the quad. Like that happens a lot at King's. So it's still a very musical community, even if you aren't doing something in like a professional or formal capacity. So we have one more question, which is, what are the most specific and interesting clubs you're in or you have heard of? So I can start first, then we can each go. The most interesting club I was in was SNARC. It was about advocating for more inclusive curricula, and me and my friend got to found kind of the first sort of SNARC-on, which was our little student conference for that society. But the most interesting club I've heard of, I don't know if it still exists, it might be an urban legend, is the Michael Cera fan club. Like, I don't know if I have a colleague who swears that it existed, but I think that's probably the weirdest King Society I've ever heard of. Sophia, would you like to go next?
Yeah, I am currently a writer for Her Campus, which is a club that's joined between King's and Dal. So you can write for it if you're a King student or Dal student. And it's an online magazine. And yeah, it's just sort of like they have an Instagram page, which will encapsulate exactly what it does. But it sort of advocates and empowers female students. You can write about anything from travel to a book that you loved. It's sort of like a creative outlet. Yeah, that's what I'm currently a part of. And I'm able to write about my exchange, like while abroad, and have a platform to kind of publish some of my writing there. So yeah, not like the Michael Cera fan club, but something interesting.
There's going to be nothing like the Michael Cera fan club. Corey, do you have any clubs you want to shout out quickly?
Yeah, I'm not in it myself, but we have the King's Theatrical Society that puts on shows throughout the year. And they also do this cool thing called Classics in the Quad, where during the foundation year, at some point, you'll be reading like a classic play, something like the Odyssey or something along those lines. And the Theatrical Society will put on a show of that reading in the quad, which is pretty awesome.
Yeah, the King's Theatrical Society is, I think, like the most active, because we only have a campus of like just under 1,000 students. It's the most active student theatrical society per capita because it is quite active. They do musicals, serious stage plays, fringe festivals. As Corey said, they always do kind of a classical play in the first semester. So if you're interested in acting, that's a really great option for you to look into. And Lucas, I don't think you were a King's student, but what is the weirdest club you've heard of at Dalhousie or King's?
It's hard to list a single one because, like I said, there's over 400, and I like to joke, if none of those 400 are of interest to you, well, it's impossible for there to be nothing that's of interest to you because you can start your own, easy as that. I think one of the weirder ones is the Dalhousie Tea Drinkers Society. They get together, they try different teas from all over the world, but there's all kinds of, even a more traditional example would be every single faculty usually has its own society as well. So for instance, there's the Dalhousie Nurses Society.
Yeah, and King's, each kind of King's programs has its own student society. So I volunteered with the Contemporary Student Society and edited the student journal Hinge. And there's also student journals that each program does as well, that if you, no matter what kind of course you're in, if you have an essay you feel would be good in that journal, you can submit it. I got published in one. It was a lot of fun. I think my mom still has it somewhere. She thought it was really cool. So we have another question, which is, can you go to the wardroom if you're underage and can't drink? So the way the wardroom works is we have a wet, dry liquor license. So if you are a King's student and you are underage, you can be in the bar while alcohol is being served, but you are not allowed to drink in the bar. You can be there, but you can't be drinking. If you're a Dalhousie student, unfortunately, you have to be of age, and your King's friend actually has to sign you in. We also got another question, which is, can you submit an application just for Dalhousie and not do King's? Of course, you don't have to come to King's if you go to Dalhousie. We would love to have you, and King's and Dal are super close. You're gonna have King's friends, but no, you don't have to take classes at King's if that is not what your heart desires. So at the end, if there's any kind of, here's one question, does either Dalhousie or King's provide American Sign Language class for people looking to learn it? Lucas, could you quickly check that out for me? Because I'm not sure of the answer. I can see Lucas like going into search mode to find it as soon as I said the question.
So I'm not sure if we have an official class, but this actually ropes back into what we were talking about earlier about the societies. There is the Dalhousie American Sign Language Society, which is listed amongst all the other clubs and societies on the DSU Dalhousie Student Union website. So it's simple as that. You could join the ASL Society.
Yeah, if you're interested in learning more about clubs, you can go to the Dalhousie Student Union or King Student Union websites and see what's currently up there. Nice save, Lucas. I'm so glad you were like right on there Googling. Yeah, so kind of the last question I have is going to be, well, Lucas and I can answer, but I think is really going to be more so for Corey and Sophia. What are your favorite places? I can either be in Halifax or at King's or Dalhousie. So you can choose two places that you really love that you think if a student comes to visit for a tour or open house, they should definitely check out.
I would say at King's, my favorite place is definitely the wardroom, which is kind of just a student lounge area. And during the day, there's a student-run cafe there, and then at night it turns into the student-run bar. It's a pretty great space to hang out or study, or it's probably my favorite place on campus. And then in Halifax in general, if you're going to be stopping by, I would definitely recommend visiting Point Pleasant Park, which is on the south end of the peninsula, and it's not far at all from downtown. You can walk there in 20 minutes, and it's just this massive park it's pretty beautiful, and you have a great view of the ocean. Yeah.
Yeah, those are two awesome spots. I love Point Pleasant Park. Okay, to pick two, I would definitely say my favorite spot on Kings or Dal. Well, definitely the wardroom. I guess that's the same as Corey, but it's a pretty beloved place. There's tons to do there. They always have awesome events on, and the galley is the daytime cafe, like Corey also said. It's just a great study spot if you're looking to do a bit of laid back studying. It's not completely silent there. You can sit with a group of friends. There's comfy couches. It's great. And then if you're just visiting Halifax, I'll stick with the outdoor theme. I personally love the public gardens. It's a super short walk from Dalhousie King's campus, just straight up to Quimple Road. It's beautiful, especially in the fall and spring and summer. So, if you're coming in September, what a great time to check it out. They usually have a little cafe running out of there as well. So you can walk around. There's some beautiful landscaping, sit down with a book, grab a coffee. It's kind of everything. It's like my dream spot, basically. Yeah.
Lucas, do you have a favorite Halifax spot?
My favorite Halifax spot is the Halifax Central Library. So if you are coming into town and you're not from around here for a visit, perhaps for a campus tour of either Dal or King's, I also recommend stopping by the Halifax Central Library. It's an award-winning building, something of an architectural marvel. You can't miss it. There's not another building in the city that looks like it. It's right off of Spring Garden Road, and it's quite a gorgeous facility. It has a cafe. It has a kind of rooftop balcony that you can hang out in, and it's got everything that you would expect a library to have and more. There's a music recording studio with instruments that anyone's able to utilize. Just a really cool spot.
Perfect. Okay, thank you so much for joining me. You all gave such great recommendations. Oh, wait, is there one more question? Yeah, so for campus tours, I don't believe we're offering any virtual campus tours right now, but if you have any kind of questions about how to visit King's, you should check out the Future Students page. Dalhousie and King's kind of have separate campus tours. I want to thank my lovely and talented panelists for joining me. You all, I think, did such a great job of talking about Dalhousie and King's. Thank you for joining us tonight. We really appreciate you coming and joining us. This webinar has been recorded, so you're going to have it sent to you and you'll have access to it. Once again, Lucas's email is just in the corner of his other corner there. Mine is in the chat. And once again, when you get the recording, you're going to have access to all that information. So yes, thank you so much for joining me. Have a great night and keep in touch. Bye.